والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا رحمة للعالمين بالقاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد. أما بعد, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All praise and glory belongs to Allah, the one who has given the guidance to humanity, the one who has given the knowledge to humanity, that if humanity was to pursue or try to acquire that guidance or knowledge, even till the end of time, they could never do it. The knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought through His prophets, the purpose of it was guidance. Guidance is necessary in a person's life so that they can get to the result which every single person, whatever they're going to do, they do it for a result. And the results are basically either you try to avoid a loss or you have the hopes of gaining something. So whatever action that you and I have done so far in our lives, it has been for a result. And that result is either we are afraid of a loss, so therefore we get motivated to act in a way that we do not get that loss. Or it has been to gain a benefit, so therefore we act so that we can get that benefit. When you look at the necessity of the prophets, that knowledge, if mankind was able to acquire through their intellect and their efforts, there was no need for the best of His creations to come down on the face of this earth, to be appointed among the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be able to go through all of these sufferings that they had. The Holy Prophet says, Hasan Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I cannot be like, I know it's probably more interesting to see two people try to fix my voice, but if my voice is not reaching to you, I can increase my volume, okay? And it might be more interesting, but just for argument's sake, or for, you can just look at me and recite a loud salawat, please. So the Holy Prophet said that no other prophet has been put through more sufferings than I have. Meaning the most amount of sufferings that any prophet had to go through was the Holy Prophet. If you think about it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the best of His creations, the one that He loved the most. When you love someone, the last thing you want to see them go through is suffering. Unless that suffering becomes a sign of His love, with me? Unless that suffering is actually a sign of how much the beloved and the one that loves, it becomes a sign of their love. And if it was not necessary, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not have brought these prophets to go through the suffering that they had to. So the knowledge that the prophets brought, it was based on two things. Because we're in the next 2 hours, what we're going to talk about is guidance. And the ones who have smiled, they already know that the 2 hours are divided in 2 days. So it's not just right now. I've already seen your interest, how much it was. So don't worry. So this guidance was actually based on two things. One was ideology, and the other was values. Meaning if till the end of time, human beings could not come up with ideology on their own without being guided. Or they cannot come up with values without being guided. And if they were to take the ideology and guidance from anyone else other than the prophets, they would never be able to achieve a result which would be to avoid loss or to gain a benefit. Meaning, whatever that they're going to do, thinking that they can avoid loss or thinking that they can gain a benefit, would never come true. Other than the guidance of the prophets. So whatever humanity has done so far, the ones who have denied the prophets or have not walked on their path or have come to their own ideology and values, what you see is that they've always gotten loss and they haven't received any benefit. And that has been going on for thousands of years. And whenever a person thinks, no, I have gotten a benefit, realizes that actually is not a benefit but loss. And whenever they have avoided a loss, they have realized that actually in that was their benefit. And you see that all around you. If we could come up with the right ideology. Ideology is basically, in other words, is how you look at the world. What are the definitions of a mother? What is the definition of a father? What is the role of a mother? What is the role of a father? What is the role of a child to their parents? What is the role of a husband? What is the role of a wife? What is the relationship between the two? When you go to work, what is the purpose or how do you look at work? When you earn money, how do you look at money? When you buy a car, how do you look at that car? When you buy a house, what do you think it makes a home? With me? Meaning every single thing that a person does, it's part of their ideology. And by that definition, there is no single person on the face of this earth that is void of ideology. Every person, the 7 billion people, every person has an ideology. Through that ideology, that person is looking at the world. With those definitions, the person is trying to act to avoid a loss or to gain a benefit. With me? In that definition, even an atheist, an agnostic, even they have ideology. Because it is the definitions that they look at the world, how they look at their life, how do they look at their roles, how do they look at material or non-material. All of that is defined by their ideology. And their ideology is based on that there is no God. A Muslim's way of looking at the world is that there is a God. And because there is a God, I cannot define the role of a father or a mother or a child or work of my house, of my car, and every single thing that happens into my life without the guidance given to me by the knowledge received by the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if this is not the case, guess what will happen to the Muslims? They will try to avoid a loss, but in that would be their benefit. And when they would try to gain a benefit, that would be their loss. The perfect example is you see that in Medina, you see that in Makkah, you see that in Kufa, and you also see in the battlefield of Karbala. The Muslims in Medina thought that they were avoiding a loss by not going with Imam Hussain. But in reality, in that was their benefit. To walk with Imam Hussain, that was their benefit. They thought by staying in Medina that they were going to get to a benefit, but they were in loss. And the same thing for the people in Makkah. And the same thing for people in Kufa. And the same thing for the army or the camp of Yazid. They thought by severing the neck of Imam Hussain that they were going to receive their benefits. But history tells that none of them got any benefits. Or they thought by disobeying Yazid that they're trying to avoid loss. By saving their lives, by in the obedience of Yazid, that they're doing what? Avoiding loss. By saving their lives, they're avoiding the loss of death. But the ones who were in the camp of Imam Hussain, they realized that their benefit is under the sword. That the safest place at that time was under the sword. To give your neck for honor, for dignity. To be able to receive that benefit, that till eternity, they will be looked upon people who had principles, who had ideology, who had values given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That they would become as a role model. And the ones who were against them, till eternity, they're going to be looked upon as people that lost and they did not get any benefit. One of the things, if you want to look at, and we'll go a little bit more in detail about what ideology and values are. The Azaa of Imam Hussain started in a room in the house of the enemy. There were a few orphans that remained. Some historians have narrated that by the time the caravan had reached Sham, 30 or up to the level of 50 kids were no longer with that caravan. Some of them were martyred when the tents were burnt, when the horses were brought to the camps. Some of them were martyred from the journey from Karbala to Kufa. And then from Kufa to Sham, the 14 cities, as narrated in history, where this caravan was took. And then some of them died in that prison. The ones who remained, and the daughters of the prophets, they started the Azaa of Imam Hussain. In a room, the house of the enemy. After 1400 years, this Aza, the commemoration of the blood of those who fell, is commemorated all over the world. There might not be a place where the Aza of Imam Hussain is not done. If you were to look at by statistics, by probabilities, by ratios, it is an impossible task. Considering that for 1400 years or more, this Aza of Imam Hussain, the ones who were performing, it was a death sentence. And it was only done in houses, in rooms, where families would sit together. Just like those orphans and the daughters of the Prophet. Just in a closed room. And they would cry. They would remember what happened in Karbala. And they were told, the parents told their children that you have to continue. Where at times it was to continue was to give parts of your body. It was to continue was to give your own children. And with all of the difficulties, with all of the death sentences, over 1400 years, we have come to the point where if you were to take a bird's eye view of this world, you would not probably find a place where the Aza of Imam Hussain is not being done. This is truly a success. The individuals who had the ideology and the values given to them by the Prophet, they survived. They survived till today. But the ones who decided to make their own ideology and to make their own values, if you see it's only for exists, why will they not survive? Is because their ideology, their values are opposite to human nature. And why did the Aza of Imam Hussain survived? Is because the ideology and the values in that Aza and in accordance to human nature. Human being wants truth. Imam Hussain stood for truth. Every human being wants honor. Imam Hussain stood for honor. Every human being loves when someone gives a sacrifice without asking for any return. If you go through the lessons of Karbala, you will see that all of those lessons are in line with human nature. Therefore, what you see is that in the Aza of Imam Hussain, even the Hindus and Sikhs, the ones who don't have anything to do with the religion of Islam, even they, because it's in line with their human nature. Just to give you an I was in England and we had a julus, and in that julus, a Sikh, and he had a daughter probably around 4 or 5 years old, was handing out drinks to the people, the Azadar of Imam Hussain. he had made her daughter. She's learning, right? She's like 4 or 5 years old. When children are of that age, they do generally ask, why am I doing this? And the father is putting that line of life, that by doing service to the ones who commemorate Hussein, you will get something in life. It was an amazing sight. She was going to each and every one and offering them drinks. And because this azah is in line with human nature, it's always going to exist. We just have to make sure that we practice it in line with the human nature. Right? If we practice it in line with the human nature and in the bounds of Islam, it will produce the results that no other movement can. If you can recite aloud salawat. So far clear? That the ideology and the values, human beings cannot come to their own conclusion. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought the best of His creations to be able to give that knowledge, that guidance of ideology and values. By doing that, whatever we are going to do, we will get that result, which is to avoid loss and to gain benefit. Clear? Okay. Now, when you look at ideology, we'll come back to, but when you look at the values, they say that, human beings don't really need revelation. And I'm going to give you a few arguments that your own self can try to understand and also try to make somebody else understand who puts an objection. And because we are living in the time where values and ethics are actually being defined in a way that the values that were there for 30, 40 years ago, they're no longer there. Right? The way that the family structure was, it was a, nucleus family. Now then it turned into like, a different concept where, and if you carry on with the concept of marriage that was 40 years ago and the concept of marriage that is today, or even let's not go that far. Even 1992, which is about 20 years or so. The concept of marriage then and the concept of marriage now. If you don't want to go that far back, you can even go back like 10 years. Even not that far back, even 5 years ago. The concept of marriage now and the concept of marriage 5 years ago. If you look at the role of a father, a role of a mother, the children's relationship to their parents, the way that you look at work and your responsibilities to work, when people buy houses and everything else that they do in their lives, those values and that way of looking at the world has changed. And it's actually going, the worldview and the values are going in a very fast down spiral. Although we have the technology and maybe the resources or the means that we did not have 40 years ago, but with all of those means, our humanity is dying. The human nature is in danger. It's probably the most endangered species that we should try to save instead of trying to save the rainforest and the pandas and, go in front of the big trawlers and try to sacrifice your life so you can save some whales or the dolphins. And we're not putting that down. The environment has rights and you should go and protect the environment. Right? But if you have two choices, right? If you have two choices, to save the environment, to save the endangered species in the animal kingdom or the insects or the trees or the plants, versus to be able to save humanity, right? Out of the two, which one would you take? Well, if you took the first one, right? Yes, the planet would live longer there will be more oxygen, there will be less pollution, the endangered species will no longer be endangered, you will have the whales and dolphins and so forth, but you will have humans walking the earth, but you will not find a human being walking the earth. Yes, you protect the environment because, I don't know, just for a fact, maybe you can tell somebody else. You know, the rainforest, right? Because I see you, when I see you, like, you know, trying to go to sleep, I'll give you something different so you come back. You know, the rainforest amounts to or produces, because it's generally called the lungs of the planet. But the rainforest, all that there is in South America and so forth, only produces 20% of the oxygen. So 20% of the oxygen in the whole world is produced by the rainforest. But when you look at the amount of importance that's given to the rainforest, it's a lot more. They have gotten to the point that these are the lungs of the planet. 80% of the oxygen produced in your atmosphere, or my atmosphere as well, is by algae, one-cell organisms that are in the water. You've seen, you know what I'm talking about? The algae. The color gets like green, right? Some of them are red. The water gets red. Right? 80% of that, 80% of the oxygen in the world is created by those. Right? So, moving along, we have to, in order for us to be able to save humanity, what we have to do is take the ideology from the prophets, because that we will never be able to come up to. And we need to take the values from the prophets, because that too we will never be able to come to. Because if you keep values relative to a reference point, they're always going to keep changing. Why? If you move that reference point, then the value will change as well. If the values become relative to our intellect, as our intellect keeps on changing, the values are going to change as well. With me? If the values are based on where we are going to draw the line, then every time we draw another line, the values are going to change. Right? If the values are, they say that actually the values of human beings is actually based in the instinct of a human being through the evolutionary process, the process of fight or flee. Okay? In order for them, the human beings, to survive, they started coming together. By coming together, they said that, if we are together, we'll be able to fight with the elements and the animals a lot better. So it is in our survival that we start living in a community, where the tasks can be divided and people can become generous to each other and be nice to each other. Then, hello, good morning, how are you? You're doing well? That if you're not nice to each other, then of course the communities won't stay together. And if the communities don't stay together, you will not be able to fight with the elements or the animals. So it was basically instinct-based of fight or flee. That you can fight better if you are together. So what a shallow way of looking at values. Meaning generosity was only self-preservation based. That if I'm good to you, then basically I'll be protected. Right? If I'm generous to you, if I am kind to you, if I am merciful to you, if I forgive you, if I help you, if I do all of these things, it was only based for the preservation of a self, our own selfish interest. If this was the case, shouldn't the whole world be a nice, happy place? Why create For example, the weapons of mass destruction. Right? Why have 80 people take over the same amount of wealth as the 3.5 billion? But if it is instinctive and is based on survival, isn't it better that everybody gets the wealth equally? So that everybody shares that, so that everybody is happy, so that everybody can be protected. Why is it that 80 people will own the wealth of 3.5 billion people? Who's going to survive? 80. And how many are going to lose? Half of the world. And do you think these 80 are going to survive too? They're not really surviving. I mean, they're surviving on antidepressants. They're surviving on paranoia. They're surviving on loneliness. They're surviving on no love. They're surviving on all of these things that are actually really not survival. You know? Somebody says, oh, this person's really rich. Oh yeah, by the time that they got to be rich, they had BP, they had diabetes. Right? They had all of these things that are associated with stress and working, 24, 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, giving your mind, working over the capacity that you have. Now, the person has high blood pressure, they have, diabetes, they have cardiovascular problems, they have kidney problems, they have arthritis, they're getting closer to the Alzheimer part, and now they have this massive table, they're sitting on it in a 10, 20,000 square foot house, all alone, and eating some beans and some ghas boost, some, salad, and, with some boiled carrots and with a cup of tea with sweeteners, And when they try to go to sleep, they can't sleep. Did they survive? They didn't survive. So if somebody is telling you that the values are actually based on instinct and that it is through the evolutionary process that we have gotten ourselves to be at this point, tell them that if it was the case, then we should have a very nice world. But we see that it is not the case. We see that a few people are actually controlling the rest. And because of that control, this sort of illusion of control, they are the ones who are actually being controlled. Are you with me? When I try to control you, basically I'm telling you that I am stuck in my own prison of low self-esteem. I am stuck in my own prison of no confidence. I'm stuck in my own prison of fear. When you try to control someone else, this is what you're saying, that you are the one who is being controlled. When you try to take the freedom of others, this is a sign that actually you are in the prison. Because if you were free, if you did not have a low self-esteem, if you didn't have inferiority complex, if you did not have fear, if you were not stuck in the prison of greed, if you were not stuck in the prison of arrogance, if you're not stuck in those, you will let everybody have their rights. You will let everybody achieve that goal of happiness. With me so far? So, the values, if it is based on intellect, that also is not going to go. That too, for example, according to my intellect, you just let anybody do whatever that they want. Right? What is it? Whatever your heart desires. So I've come to the conclusion that the definition of freedom, when you look at Oxford Dictionary, is the power or the right to be able to think, act, and what is it? The ability to, the power to, or the right of, is it thinking, acting, and there is another part. It's not coming to my mind. It's an Oxford Dictionary. But anyways. So if you have the right, choose. Sorry. Okay, so three things: thinking, acting, and choosing. So if you do thinking, acting, and choosing, you have the right to be able to freely do that, then you have freedom. But if somebody is telling you something or restricting you about thinking, just stay with me. There's a reason why I'm telling you. If somebody is restricting you how to think, that you don't have the, or how to act or to choose, then by the definition in Oxford Dictionary, is not freedom. Right? When in 95 the internet was given to the public, the person who gave the technology to the public was asked, why are you giving to the public? He said that we want to know what people are thinking and what they should think. Right? In real time. We don't want to know after 10 years or 20 years. We want to know in real time what is a person thinking, and we want to give them what to think in real time. And that's how it is. What clothes are you going to buy? What house you're going to buy? What car you're going to buy? How you're going to be a wife? How you're going to be a husband? How you're going to be a parent? How you're going to be relationship with your parents? Just check Google. Just ask him. Oh, this house looks really nice because Sheikh Google is saying the neighborhood is really good and the prices are going up. And, this real estate agent has got 5 stars. And look at the reviews. The reviews are really, really good of this agent. And, I read this particular article that neighborhood prices are going to go up 20% next year. When you buy a car, this, is it just me or you guys do that too? Look at the reviews of the car, the specifications of the car, who is selling it, if there were any recalls in the car. When you get to be a father or a mother, I don't know, what should I do? Let me ask Sheikh Google. Sheikh Google says, when the child cries, don't lift him up. Let him cry. Why? You just let him cry. If you lift it up, if you have the child, he'll get attached to you. They will not have confidence. Later on in their life, they will have this inferiority complex. And, their motor skills are not going to be there, and their lungs are not going to develop properly. So, just let your child cry in the crib, and let him cry to the point that he goes to sleep. Right? That's the whole world. The mother-in-law is saying to the daughter-in-law, Betty, you should start giving water to your son now. He's old enough. But Sheikh Google says, I can't give water. You guys didn't know, in those times we didn't have the research. So, Sheikh Google is saying, don't give water. So I'm not going to give water. Between a husband and a wife, the problems arise. What is the husband supposed to be? Ask Sheikh Google. He should take you out for dinners. He should take you out for movies. He should bring flowers for you. He should wash the dishes. He should do the laundry. He should be a person who always comes to you and says, honey, how can I help you? And please sit down and tell me all of your problems. I'm willing to listen to you. It has to be sensitive. It has to be like a person who is going to nourish you, nurture you, is going to be that person who's going to give you the freedom, whatever you want to pursue. And, is going to be that person that you can always... Our divorce rate is reaching almost the same percentage of 60%, more or less, that is in the West. Why? Is it because we have our ideology and values through Islam? No, it's through Sheikh Google. And when you go through the problems between a husband and wife, this list that I gave you, it was not just I was coming up with it. This list that I gave you becomes a reason for people to get divorced. And it's the same list that is used by John Smith and Jennifer or whatever. Or Sukhwinder or Parvinder or Lee or Wong. And same thing. You go all around the world, this is what's happening. So is that freedom? What did the dictionary say? The power or the right to think as you want. Are you able to think as you want? No. It's told to you. It's told to you in a way that you think you have freedom, but you are a slave, and I'm a slave. To speak or to act, right? How are you going to act? It's free. You're free. Act in whichever way you want. Then you have all of these laws. You start looking at these children who, for example, we were just actually talking about that in UK. There's a law where, the teachers, they monitor the children, and there's, if they start having a beard or a little bit bigger beard, it's like, oh, red flag. So why can't I have a beard? Or you can't act that way. Sisters, for example, they wear hijab in France. This is what happened. What? You're restricting. No. This is your freedom. By not wearing hijab, this is your freedom, because hijab was supposed to be your restriction. We're making you free now. Before, if you had any nobility or dignity, we are making you free of that. You're free now. You don't have to have any dignity or honor. You're free. Any person walking on the street can look at you whichever way that person wants, and you can be walking with your husband. Is your choice a freedom? You have choice. You have freedom to choose. You see all the billboards that you see on the. You see all the billboards that you see on the highways and stuff, or the ads that you see, or when you open Gmail, or Amazon, or even say Google. You see all of those things that are coming in front of your eyes. Yes. Guess what they are? Is to take your choice away. Whoever has got more advertisements on the TV, and why do you think that they buy for millions of dollars, crazy amount of money, just 5 seconds, right? For an ad in Super Bowl or whatever. Why do you think they do that? Because that 5 second is worth to them hundreds of millions of dollars. Why? Because that picture is going to come in front of you, and when you are in the shop thinking you have a choice, you're going to pick their product. So where's the freedom? You still think you have freedom? And it's the same thing that it has done with religion. And our values and our ideology actually is not based on the ideology given to us by the Prophet or the values. We have deceived ourselves. A person who follows the Holy Prophet should be the way that we act with each other. Really? The person who follows the path of Imam Hussain should be the way that we are. The person who has learned from Imam Jafar Sadiq Imam Bakr Imam Sajjad should we be this way? Our interaction with each other, should we be this way? No. In us, we've got the disease of arrogance. We pray 5 times a day, but we have this disease of arrogance. We have the disease of lying, of backbiting, of tale-telling, of, hurting the other person's feelings to the point that they cannot even get up. We call each other our Muslim brothers and sisters, but If a brother is becoming successful in their life, we pull their leg. When it comes to do business, who do we do business with? Who do we do business with? This deception, we have it too. We think that we have the ideology and the values of the prophets. We don't. We've made up our own ideology, and we've made up our own values, and we've given the illusion of Islam. And we've been stuck in a prison now for 1400 years or more. And we are here to commemorate that being who was put in a prison, but he was not a prisoner. The people who put him in the prison, they were actually the prisoners. They were stuck in their prison of greed. They were stuck in their prison of arrogance. They were stuck in their demented ideology of Islam. They were stuck in their prison of power. They were the actual prisoners. Imam Sajjad was put in a prison. He had his hands tied. He had shackles and an iron bracelet in his neck. The way they took him to Kufa. Do you know how they took him to Kufa? You've heard about the mothers whose hands were tied. Either their hands were tied this way or their hands were tied behind their backs, behind their necks. And these ropes were put in the arms of the daughters of the Prophet. That in itself is something that if a person has an image of that, because when we listen that Bibi Zainab's arms were tied in a rope, automatically our mind, our imagination deletes the part that these ropes were not tied on their own. Our imagination is not strong enough. Our mind is not strong enough. Our heart is not strong enough. It automatically deletes the fact that somebody came that close to Bibi Zainab, the daughter of Bibi Fatima, who had her chadar that was the chadar of Bibi Fatima. That somebody could come that close and snatch that off of her head. To have her hands tied, to have her go through that battlefield. When Bibi saw that, she called upon the Holy Prophet. She called upon the Holy Prophet and she said, Ya Rasulullah, your daughters have been made prisoners. Here lies the bodies, and the sand is covering their bodies. And here lies your grandson, whose neck was severed from the back. Imam Sajjad used to say, I am the son of that person whose neck was severed from the back. They tied the arms of Imam Sajjad on the neck of the camel. His arms were tied and it was put on the neck of the camel. His body was put into chains, and his legs were tied around the stomach of the camel. This was the condition of Imam Sajjad. And then they made these camels run. The whole body of Imam Sajjad was touching the body of the camel that was running. And when he was made to walk, if he was a little bit slow or if he would fall down, they would hit his back. When he was paraded in those markets with the daughters of the prophets, with the heads on the spears, people used to throw stones at them. Imam Sajjad used to have this camel, this she camel, and Imam Sajjad, when he passed away, they said that the she camel stayed at the grave of Imam Sajjad and she would not leave. Imam Sajjad was so merciful to her that he never hit her even once. When Imam Bakr was given the ghusl to Imam Sajjad, Imam Bakr saw that the wounds of Kufa and Sham had never healed. The signs were still there. That the marks were still there. Ya Allah, out of your mercy and grace, of everything that you love, everything that you are merciful to, we beseech you for that love that you have. Allow us to be able to see the world through the eyes of Imam Sajjad. Give us the wisdom and the courage to have his ideology. Let us have his values and morals. And make us among those people who would be successful in this world and the hereafter by standing with the Imam of the time. When the Hussein of time comes, oh Allah, let us not to be in the opposite camp. Give us the strength and the wisdom to be able to mourn Imam Hussein as it is his right. Mujtaba.